When can creation become a form of rebellion? Why are limitations the impetus for imagination? Is the most evocative art a combination of the familiar and the weird? This cosmic transmission comes from Tertia, a cosmic composer from London, England. Here, she discusses the creation of her new EP, Fieldwork.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very like non-musical family, and I started doing music. I started learning the flute when I was like 6, and then I like kind of got way into it. And then I moved school and then did loads and loads of music, basically just like in school, like in choirs and orchestras and stuff. But I guess it was never something that ever felt like my family took that seriously. So it always felt like a bit of a solo mission, like a side quest. And then I was in choirs, kind of progressively more and more seriously as I got older. And I think that was what massively informed my kind of understanding and love for harmony, which I think is kind of like very much the backbone of a lot of the music I make.
Right. So you've always been making your own music.
Yeah, so I think I wrote my own song on the piano when I was like 5. But I've always done it. And I think it just came a lot out of boredom, really, because like my sisters are both quite a lot older than me. And I think that they had their own stuff going on. I think I was always kind of left to my own devices a lot. And I had a keyboard in my room. And I never had any piano lessons. I've never had any piano lessons. I think I had them at school for maybe 2 weeks before I was like, actually, no, I don't like this. So it's all been very like, with the piano anyway, and with the production, it's all been very self-taught, which has on one hand been great, because it's kind of allowed me the freedom to explore. But on the other hand, potentially at times I felt a bit held back or limited, and like, but that's I guess what friends are for.
I definitely think there's a different kind of feeling of achievement when you complete a project and it's been completely self-taught, or
Yeah.
you've taken on the reins of learning something new yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I also think there's a I can't remember who said this, but I remember someone was talking about how like creativity is a lot of that is like play. Like if you consider like when you're a kid and you're given loads of toys and you're like, what do I do with this? And then you make up a game. Like that's kind of like what at least music production was to me initially. I was just like, okay, like I downloaded Logic and I was like, I've just got a toy here and I'm just gonna play with it. So yeah, that's kind of like, I think that's a really fun place to be. And I think you can kind of tell the creatives around you who have that kind of approach to it as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting how often that concept has come up doing these conversations with people. Like I was even talking to my friend Jordan the other day just about, she was talking about the energy of just wanting to go out and like make a film, for the fun of it with your friends, go to a nearby park or forest and just like play, like you say. So it's like just trying to get back to what you would like to doing as a child, like is so.
Yeah, and also the limitations of being a child, like the
Yeah.
limitations of like, for example, having like no budget or having like no technology. Like with the limits come the kind of like the impetus to like think beyond like the walls of reality and like try and like imagine something bigger. And I think that Jordan's right. Like I think having like maybe a more of a cowboy approach, there's really something to be said for like what it forces you to kind of come up with and imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I think, that's so important across all mediums. That, I was thinking the other day, this is sort of unrelated, but it relates to a question that I wanted to ask you. I was just with a bunch of my friends the other day in a room, and I was looking around thinking, it's so funny how all of us sort of, no one goes under their real name. Like it's a bunch of like people who are trying to have superhero identities or something.
Yeah, and I think maybe I should have done that. I really feel like I've missed a trick there.
Really?
Yeah, I do, because like I think like this it's so personal, like releasing, making music and then sending it to a mix engineer, and like then like if you do that, or like sending it to a mastering engineer, and then like you're showing it to people, like these very innermost, like personal thoughts before you've even like released it. And then you've got the release thing, by which point you're kind of like, I think a lot of artists will kind of like deliberately detach themselves from that piece of work, almost as a self-preservation thing. Like, that doesn't really represent me anymore. But because if it did represent them, then it would be like such a terrifying prospect, like
Right.
showing like everyone who like knows you this piece of work. But yeah, I do think that like having maybe like a pseudonym or a moniker, like it does make it easier maybe to feel that there is a distinction there. Uh, but also whatever, it's convenient, I suppose. Everyone knows that Tertia means me, so there's that, I guess.
Yeah, I think it can also just be a helpful tactic, sort of when you're starting out, to, until you've gathered momentum and you understand more about what you're trying to do. It can keep that sort of distance between you and what you're making.
Yeah.
Even talking to Matthew about his album, and we were saying, just about that freedom that you get from changing your name, and even mentally, like how it's changing how you perceive what you're doing and frees you up to experiment, under one goal.
Yeah. I also think the thing is with Matthew is that he had like a very distinct from a onlooker, obviously not being like, as listening to his music for many years, I think he had a big journey, like as a producer and then as an artist, and then this kind of like switch up to an artist that was like as much about kind of um color and excitement and like the artistry. I think with his two artist projects were quite different because there was like a big emphasis on like artistry and like aesthetic and like kind of like collaborative, like multidisciplinary, like the music videos and stuff with the Chameleon project. Whereas I feel like with me, it's all been like a sort of single strand of like my music and my sound evolving, and I haven't really felt like I've ever departed so much from that it would warrant like a whole different project. It all feels like there is a kind of like chain link between each thing. But then kind of looking back, like stepping back, when I look at my earliest projects and then like this EP, it's does feel really, really different. But I think maybe there is something, even if it's just like subliminal, there is something in there that like carries through.
Mm. And because you produce your own stuff, maybe, do you think it's also you getting better at that production side of things, so you can, more quickly and more directly translate your idea into exactly what you mean? That sort of is allowing you to keep this chain.
Definitely. And also like being able to do things, because before, like with my first EP, with like Under the Tertia project, which was just Tertia's mixtape, it was kind of like a few songs that it was some of the first songs that I'd ever produced myself, and I made them like with my friend from the Netherlands, Sasha, and he like had a really, really incredible like input on that EP, and I love it, and like that was an amazing collaboration. But also now that I'm doing things myself, it does feel different. And I think you're right, like having the ability, having those skills to actually complete, like to put that vision in and make that into like something that you can actually hear, is really, really satisfying, and definitely sets this EP apart from even the last one, where again, I was collaborating with people on that as well. So this one is probably like maybe my most independent body of work.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's so impressive. And I love that EP you're referring to, Tertia's mixtape. And it leads me to just think about your creative voice as an artist, because I always get the impression when I listen to your music, like I can just sense there's a confidence there, like in the DNA of what's coming together. But is voice something you consciously think about, or does it just spill out of you?
Definitely I have, like there have been songs that I've written where I'm like, I really like that song and I think it's cool, but it doesn't fit into like the voice that is this project. Like for example, I wrote this song a couple years ago called Fruit, and it was like it was like weirdly jazzy, and it was very like kind of, I don't know, I liked it, and like it's, I still enjoyed writing, and I did record it just so I had it, but I was sort of like, this isn't like enough. This doesn't have enough of like Tertia to release it. And I think in that sense that is a level of like self-consciousness around the voice. But I would never like consciously write in order to sound a certain way. Like I've been doing a lot of film composing, and it's made me realize how kind of the challenge of separating work from the voice, but also when I then come back to using like my kind of like songwriting voice, it's really nice and really satisfying. But also departing from that is really fun and really refreshing too. So I think like basically it's an interesting question, because I this year doing this composing work have become more than ever like aware of the existence of my voice, and kind of grappling with like both leaning into that and also challenging that.
What elements do you think contribute to that Tertia sound? Like, are there specific tones and vibes that you're going after?
Yeah, like basically anything that sounds like Boards of Canada. They're like a Scottish duo, and
Right.
they're brothers from the Highlands, and they were releasing music in the 90s and like early 2000s, and they're like super enigmatic. Like they would do that like cool thing which you can't do anymore because of the nature of this industry, but like they would do this thing where they would release an album, but like before they would release the album, they'd get 10 vinyls and hide them in random places around like the UK, and like
Cool.
leave tiny clues as to where they are, and obviously like their fan base would be like, that's sick, and go and find them.
Yeah.
But they're really sick, and they made like really synthy, really warm, like old vintage analog synths. And like it's actually very simple production, but it's super like beefy and powerful. And I also think because I like have this weird obsession with Scotland, not that I like go there all the time, but I just find it like a really mystical, exciting place. And I find the fact that they're from the Highlands of Scotland so cool, but they're making like electronic music that has like quite a hip hop, like they use like hip hop drum patterns. It's just like they're like a massive contradiction. And I discovered them when I was like 19. And I was with a friend, and I was looking at like one of those music maps where like, it shows a map of the world,
Right.
and you like zoom into a place, and like you click on a little dot on the location, and it will like play a local artist.
So cool.
And I haven't been able to find this fucking website ever since then. And I've asked people, and it's called like World Radio or something, but I can't find it.
Wow.
But I was like, ooh, Scotland's cool. Zoomed in right to the Highlands. I was like, wow, that's really, really north. Like that's like, didn't even realize people were like making music that far north. And I listened to it, and it was like this mad like electronic like / hip hop, like almost like got that kind of Detroit like club synthy vibe, and I was like, this is mental. Anyway, since then I love it, and I feel like I hear them so much in my music, and then I'm combining that like synthy production with also like having vocals on top of that, because they're fully purely instrumental.
Right.
So then having vocals on top of that, and I would say like my vocals are very like, you know, leaning into the choir stuff a lot. And so I would kind of say the marriage of maybe slightly poppier like stroke choral vocals with like a more alternative synthy business. It's all quite experimental and strange, but I would say if I were to like really distill it down to its core, maybe those are like the two like, what's the word?
Like driving forces
Yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah. It's interesting just talking about contrast, because I think a lot of the art that I love, contrast is at the core, and it kind of makes things feel more believable and real when there's a contrast at the heart of them. And I think, like with your song Someone New as an example of that like old choir sound mixing with this really futuristic soundscape, you have a lot of contrast in your music, I think, just inherently. But is that something you think about, or?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I think particularly with that song where there is such a like there is such a switch up in the middle, where it goes from this like synth bass and like drums like samples with like all this weird production stuff I was toying with then literally just like a like 4-piece like choir harmony bit, and then back into that again. It's quite like, definitely, that was a conscious decision. Whether I pulled it off, who knows? But like I'm glad that I experimented with it. And I think also part of this project, which I'm really happy that I've done, is like I've never really been scared to be bold. Like I've always like taken risks on, and maybe that makes my music less accessible than other people's music, but it's also like I've never shied away from like a big creative decision. And sometimes I look back and go, God, that's actually really weird what I've done. Like one of the songs from the EP Near, like there was like this weird bit crushing like effect that I put on the drums, and at the time I was like, this is sick, and I was listening back to it a few days ago, and I was like, that is so weird. What was I thinking when I did that? But
Yeah.
I don't regret doing it, because I just think it's fun, and as I said, it's all just like playing around and being experimental. And I think that there's a real place and a real like there's something really special about that in the world of like hyper commercial music, where like the ability to create high fidelity music is so massive, that leaning into like glitches and artifacts, which is like what you call basically like glitches within production, leaning into that and like playing around with like distortion, but also distortion that almost deliberately sounds like it's a mistake, is something that's really nice, because it's like refreshing. It's like a step away from like what we'd tend to be hearing.
Yeah, I think imperfections always make something more interesting, like especially in art.
Yeah.
That's what makes it human. And like when you're meeting somebody, like they're complex, they're interesting, they've got like this, they're three-dimensional, you know what I mean? I think that's what I really like about your music as well, is like when I'm listening to it, I just sense that you've been completely free and have followed your imagination wherever it wanted to take you. I suppose that's why I'm really curious to see the form of this EP, how it came out, what it's like, how it sounds.
So I guess the format of the EP is different to how my other music has been released. Like there's a big like release that has been in the last like year or so, well, few years really, emphasis on like what they call like a waterfall release, which is basically where you release like an EP or an album, one song at a time, and then when the next one comes out, it joins that one as part of the project. But the problem is with that approach is that you kind of want every song to be single worthy. And I've always wanted to waterfall release, because I think it's a really satisfying way to like give each song its like time to shine.
Right.
Especially like in this like current world where it's really hard to get people to listen to a whole project start to finish. And so obviously the way that people release music has changed, and ultimately write music. But this was like the first EP. I mean, I've made 3 EPs. This was the first one where I was like, every song on this I feel like just deserves to be its own single. So 3 of the singles are out. So it was Someone New, and then it was Near, then it was the latest one, Arlo, and then I got the last song from the EP coming out. That's the one that's to come, and that's the thing that makes it the EP. But it's a bit of a like silly, it's all a bit silly, because it's like I'm releasing an EP, but really I'm just releasing a song.
Right.
But
Okay. Yeah.
the EP like enters into its full form.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a bit of a marketing tactic, I guess, to be like, it's a new EP.
But still, it's like it's a powerful experience when songs get grouped together like that into an album or an EP. I mean, like absorbing things within context always changes them in some way. And especially when the individual songs are, part of the family, it's like,
Yeah, well, I think that's what's nice about it really, is you get to kind of you get to like do the bit where you're like, just listen to this song, but then you get to do the bit where you're like, okay, the whole thing now you can, and it always has its own like metamorphosis where it gets to experience its place as like a single and also as part of a bigger project. But the thing is with this project is it is really different. Like I've got like Someone New. I mean, that is definitely a through line throughout all of it, but there does seem to be, like with all projects, there is a bit of an oscillation in terms of like energy and feeling and subject matter and stuff like that. But there are like a few things that I've experimented with in particular that kind of form like the very like personality of the EP, which is Fieldwork.
right.
And the whole thing with Fieldwork was I have always loved this idea of using like samples of things and like integrating them into my music. And then I got to the point when I was actually like kind of able to do that, by which point I thought that was really lame to like use a lighter to make like a snare drum. I was like, that's been done now. Like I'm pretty sure like Phineas and Billie Eilish did that. Like, aren't we doing that now, like 6 years on? And so instead of doing that, I did this thing where I would just record like a really ambient sound, like almost like inaudibly, like a weird. So for example, someone new, I went into a church and literally just pressed record on my voice memos on my phone. There was no sound.
Wow. Yeah.
Like there was no like real, like the waveform was pretty much just flat.
Right.
But it was just like, for some reason, I felt like there was a significance in just like having some kind of ambience into a song, which had like a lot of like churchy music and stuff like that.
You're basically capturing the energy or the essence of a place via audio.
Yeah, exactly. So that was literally, it was just like an energy thing, as opposed to like, and which sounds a bit stupid, and I guess that's like the thing where like when you produce music and you just kind of it's all a bit pretentious really, because like no one's ever really going to hear it, but you get to like tell yourself, oh, that was quite fun what I did, or like that was quite cool. And then what else was it? I wrote this song about my boyfriend, like when we first started like dating.
Right.
And I by this point already had this idea of like Fieldwork and wanting to get like these sounds, and these like ambient sounds, and I just went on his street and just recorded like Camberwell High Street, and it's just cars. Like if you listen like freakishly closely and you're wearing really good headphones, you can kind of hear it, but it's just like, again, it's just like it's more of a something that has more meaning to me than to anyone else. Actually, and someone new as well, I've got a recording of, I was at a gig and I basically looped together recordings of people like cheering the artist, and like, again, it's like completely inaudible really, but I have looped that recording and then I've like side chained it with the bass, with the kick drum. So like I've got this, like there's a sense that there's something growing.
Right.
But I actually think there is something to be said for like maybe like some part of one's brain like picking up on something that they're not really conscious of. So I guess just leaning into that. And that's why it's called Fieldwork, because it's like taking samples from like the real world.
That's great.
Yeah.
And talk to me a little bit about the album artwork.
So the album artwork was like, so the vibe of my, like the Tertia project has kind of become something I love. I am a bit of a lover of like the macabre. Like I find comfort in listening to true crime stories. Like I like love like the horror genre. I'm terrified but obsessed with the idea of ghosts. Like I just have a strange kind of like part of me that's fascinated by like darkness and creepiness. And I think like a lot of that determines the sort of aesthetic of maybe my last EP and this EP, and like a ghostliness. And obviously like you worked on that music video, and like there was a definite like creepiness that I really wanted to make happen. I'm not really sure why. I guess it's quite natural, but the artwork, I knew I wanted it to be kind of creepy, and also because as I said, a lot of like there's a lot of glitchiness and a lot of not distortion like in like in the sonic sense, like the effect, but distortion, like distorted images and like creepiness, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of like if you're looking at if you like look at a loved one's face, but their eyes are like, you wake up one morning and their eyes are like half a centimeter further apart than they usually are, you're going to be like, that's fucking terrifying. What the fuck? You're not the person. You're like a imposter.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something quite creepy about like that. And so I really love the idea. I got my hand and I put it on a photocopy. Well, initially I was just like, it'd be cool to like photocopy my hand. And then I did it. And as I did it, I just like moved my hand so that my fingers looked like really creepily long.
Wow.
And then I just had this weird like scan of my hand, elongated fingers. I was like, great, what am I gonna do? and then it was all really weird. But then I like had this, really lent into this choir thing, and the idea of like prayer, and like the idea of like thinking outside of our like known reality. And I like the idea of two hands being next to each other. There felt like there was something quite like symbolic about that. That felt like added to it. I don't know. But yeah, it was sort of just, again, like just a lot of messing around. And then I eventually came to that idea. And I'm not like by any means an artist or like a graphic designer, but I like really like taking things into my own like completely ignorant hands with stuff like this, because it's basically all just a bit silly anyway. So it's like, why like pay someone to do this when I could just like do this myself and like have fun with it? And if it's bad, then whatever, it's bad. But but it's all me, and then it feels like it's, you know, it's all part of the same flavor of it. But what it's left with is kind of like what I really love, that glitchy, creepy hand, and for me it like has really, it really feels like an accurate, I suppose, like an accurate amalgamation of the vibe of the EP, which is cool. And maybe that's something that you have to get good at as an artist. You have to get good at, like, fine, you make the music, but it's also you have to do all the other stuff. And like, if you don't enjoy doing the other stuff, you have to find a way to make it fun. Because I know a lot of artists are like, oh, can't I just make music? And like, of course, that is the ideal scenario. You don't have to do any of the other stuff. But actually, if you can try and find a way to make that fun and palatable and like make that feel like it's part of the same process, then that's great. And I feel like I'm sort of learning how to do that.
Yeah, it definitely feels part of the same universe as well, and I like how it's sort of abstract enough that, you know, you can read into it what you want, looking at the cover and listening to the music.
Yeah, I also think like when you have, and I don't know like how the other artists you've spoken to, how they feel about it really, but like when you have your name as the artist project, I think maybe there's a bit more of a like tendency to want to like make the face of the project or the brand or like the tone of it not you.
Yeah.
So like rather than having like my face on the art, it'd be mad if like my artist project was called Tertia and then like the EP was just like my face. It would just be like, oh my God, get over yourself. So I'm like, well, and also I have no desire to do that, because like the person that I maybe was 5 years ago, which was someone who was really comfortable with the idea of having an artist project, is not the person I am now, where I'm in this position. I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, what the hell? It's just so like mental that I'm like posting photos of myself online and being like, please it, you know, it's all like, it feels so far apart. So I guess, as I said before, like finding a way to like do that thing that doesn't make you want to like climb into a hole and like pull the soil over you,
Right.
just like rest, is really important. And also sometimes it doesn't work. Like sometimes having an artist project is very exhausting. I think a lot of people find it very exhausting, but I think I found a way to do it at a pace that I can handle.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, do you think it's the same with your composing work, would you say? Like, I know we were talking earlier just about having briefs and using rules to our advantage and stuff. Is that similar to how that's affecting your work in that scenario?
Yeah, like having 100% control can lead to like a bit of an existential like freak out where you're like, where do I even start? It's nice when someone writes like the first sentence of the essay for you.
Yeah.
And like when you're working with something that exists. I mean, also I think my workflow with composing stuff is sort of changes depending on the project. But like we were just talking about Jordan, like I scored that she was in a short called For the Love of Women. And that was one of the recent scores I did. And that was kind of a classic score thing, in the sense that the director, Orla, had like temp music. And then she sort of sent it to me and she was like, this is kind of the general vibe that I want to use. But
Right.
then I was like, I quite like this, but I also feel like we could do something a bit more, like you bounce off that and do something maybe a bit more experimental, and maybe lean into like the creepiness of it, because it's about like being a woman walking home at night. And so yeah, I feel like that was like maybe a more classic, like a classic approach. But then of other, like I'm working with the director at the moment, and I was just like, can you just make a playlist of things just so I can get like the tone, and then you work from that. I think it's really fun to use loads of different instrumentation. Like when you're making contemporary music, like how often are you going to use like a sort of a Celtic flute sample? I mean, maybe, but also harder to find a place for that. I think it's fun to be able to like mess around with different sounds and different like sonic directions, especially when you have, as I was saying, like when you have an artist's voice and you feel like to a certain extent the music you make has to adhere to that. So the process of being able to score and do like an orchestral score in the like style of like a kind of John Williams-esque score,
Right.
is like so fun and so weird. And because I never had like a formal education in scoring, I feel like my approach to it is quite intuitive. So I still feel like the same level of satisfaction from creating a film score as I do making sort of music, my own like songs. Uh, I think that like what I love about the scoring is that you're adding a flavor and you can really determine the relationship between the viewer and the person on the screen.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever seen the film Worst Person in the World.
Yeah.
I can't remember the composer on it, but he was talking about how like if you want, you know how often, like especially these days when there's more ambiguity in the way that you view the protagonist in the film, loads of films are coming out with really hateable protagonists.
Right.
And obviously in that film, like this protagonist is very, very fallible, and you want the viewer to feel that. And so like in the moments where like she is doing something that maybe is like morally questionable, you would use music that doesn't like fit her frame of mind.
That contrast again, like
Yeah, you're creating a disconnect, you're creating a contrast like strategically to make the viewer feel like they don't fully understand how the protagonist is feeling or why they're making those decisions. And I think the ability to like manipulate like the viewer in that way is like really, really cool and really powerful and interesting. And rather than just being like happy music, sad music, cool music, weird music, it's like you're bouncing off something else that's another kind of stimuli, and that's really exciting and really interesting. I love that.
Because it's almost like you're composing for that character's mind and their thoughts and their, you know, complexities that we all have, rather than like just literally what is happening on screen. But what would be your, so you say you make a playlist with maybe the director, and then what is your next go-to point of action? Do you sit down and play something, or?
Yeah, like I think that something that is really helpful to do to make sure that you're aligned with like the director is to almost make like the credits music first.
Right.
Like so that you can kind of like make sure that you're aligned on tone and like final feeling, because it's like something quite like ineffable. There's something quite like weird about like tone being more than just like mood. It's also about like this, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I guess that's what makes it interesting. So maybe starting at the end, like starting with like the fullest possible version of that thing, where like you've reached a conclusion and then everything else leads up to that. So then like you'll take from that numerous different sequences and then apply them to different areas. But also I think like, and there's a lot of this now, like a lot of people are doing this now, is they'll basically restrict themselves to like 4 instruments so that they can basically experiment loads throughout the film, but making sure that there is that continuity because they're only using the same 4 instruments, but they're like doing whatever they want with them. And I think like basically it's also a selfish thing as a composer to make sure, because if you're in a feedback kind of relationship with a director or with whoever's like in charge of like the score and the music, and you're kind of, and you don't lay out that vibe first things first, and you're kind of in this like ongoing battle. And I think another thing, this is like a classic composer like problem, is when like the filmmaker loves the temp music so much that they almost like do the rough cut with like the temp music in mind, and they become so attached to that thing and so attached to that sound that by the time the composer comes around, which can be really late after they've got the picture locked, after like months of watching this edit, they've basically got like quite massive demo-itis where they actually can't, like no matter how much you try and listen to their brief, it's not the same as the temp music, and then you just can't satisfy them. And that's why like personally, like I think that it's really wise if you're a filmmaker to like think, I'm not a filmmaker and I've only been doing this for a short amount of time, but like even still, I feel like a really nice way to manage expectations is almost to like choose your composer like very early on, and then like make sure that is part of the mood board, because otherwise I don't know, otherwise you're setting yourself up for disappointment. And like as much as possible I try to like replicate the vibe and style of another composer for temp music, but like it's obviously not going to happen, because it's just like the human condition. You can't just like shape shift into a different composer.
It's like you're almost building the DNA of the project, like, and music is, like we just said, like such a big part of many things like that it just makes so much sense. It's like casting a film, like it's such an important decision that it's not something that you can just go, somebody like Joaquin Phoenix, like get them, like you have to, like starting from the center out and be like, what are the foundations of this thing? And then let's make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're starting from a place that we just can't, that's not going to be impossible to come back from or like reach if we go in a different direction.
Definitely. I also think it depends on like the director and how much they want music to be like. So for example, like Zone of Interest, that film was really interesting because Mika Levi's was the composer on that project, and they made a really, really long score. I think they might have scored the whole film, and then by the time the director was looking at the footage, they were like, actually, I only really want music in these very small windows, and so basically most of the score got cut out, which was like obviously a stylistic decision because it's all about, they won an award for like best like sound design in that film, and so obviously having like the sparse, like very little music meant that there was more space for other stuff. Obviously like music, it feels so important to me because and probably to a lot of people who listen to it, but maybe some directors don't feel that way.
Just depends on the project.
Yeah, it's depends on the project.
So then pivoting back into the EP, are there specific elements that you've taken from your composing experience and brought to this project?
Yeah, I actually think like the very like the identity of the EP, which is like to record ambience and like have that play, have that like injected into like the arrangement, the production of the song, was definitely like largely born out of doing composing work and almost liking like the feeling of there being like a real world thing that your music is complementing, or in this case it's the other way around. It's sort of like the real world ambience is complementing the music. But yeah, I feel like maybe having that other kind of mode, like that other audio form came from that. And also sound design, like I've been doing, like I'm really bad at it, but I've been doing like sound design and like some Foley work for stuff, like usually just if the director can't afford to get a sound designer and a composer, so I'll be like, I can try. So I've been doing a bit of that as well. So I wonder if maybe there's part of me has just been like getting into like the workflow of using sounds more. But yeah, I think it has.
That's great. I mean, it's so cool how one side of your creative life is sort of feeding into the other. I love it. Okay, how about with that we listen to the first song on the EP and work our way through.
Cool.
Today I've been thinking about you. I'm wondering what you've been up to. Good job and a new flat and a woman who won't talk back. You were drinking when I last saw you, when I last saw you, when I last saw you. And I could tell there was someone new, someone new, someone new, someone new. I saw you, and I saw you, and I saw you. And I could tell there was someone new, someone new, someone new, someone new.
Sick. I love that song so much. I noticed just listening back to it as well that it's a common theme throughout your music that it's never predictable about where it's going to go in terms of it's not like verse chorus. There's like it's very
It's quite transient and
exactly.
linear. I've always found like a lot of people have been really nice and been like, oh, that's what's so cool about like your music is that it changes. It's like transformative. It like kind of transforms into these different things. But actually, the main reason why is because I actually find it so hard to like take something back to like the chorus.
Right.
Like I actually find that really difficult. So it's not because I'm like really purposefully trying to do that. It's just something that kind of happens naturally. But I think also that is like that puts me in a place where I feel like each song hopefully goes on a bit of a journey, or at least it doesn't feel like it needs to adhere to any like traditional song structure, which makes it easier, I think, for me.
Yeah.
But also maybe makes it harder for the listener because they're not returning back to something that they like are expecting, which is like one of the main things about pop music is you want to feel like you know the song off by heart by the time the song's over, which is impossible, I think,
Yeah.
with my music when you're listening to it for the first time.
Yeah. But I think that's sort of the experience you go to your music for, why is this song the first song on the EP?
I think it was the first one I wrote.
Mm.
As you know, that's a lie. It wasn't. Why is it the first one I wrote on it? Maybe because I think like it set the tone for the project, at least like incorporating that kind of Latin stuff, which comes later, again in the EP. It kind of set that tone. And I also think like chronologically, like it made sense. Like the subject matter was like maybe made sense for that time, but also I feel like there's been a bit of a development, like I've like sprung from that into like other songs. It makes sense. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it sort of feels right for it to be the first song on the EP. But really, like, it was just how I felt it sounded, and then going into the next one, it felt like it sounded right, as opposed to really giving it so much thought. But maybe I'll change the order. Who knows? I'm not really like an album writer. Like I wouldn't, like some people are brilliant at that, but I see each song as like quite a specific, like episodic thing. Where this doesn't feel like I would love to be the kind of writer that makes like beautiful interludes between my songs and it will be like a long journey. And I hope that it is a journey, but like maybe not a journey in the traditional like artistic sense.
Yeah. You can have different types of narrative. I mean, like if you're listening to an album that's not necessarily a concept album, you sort of have to meet the artist halfway in terms of figuring out what the narrative might be.
Yeah, like you fill in the gaps.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe talk a little bit about the ending as well, like that sort of Latin chorus that comes in.
So, I was in choirs for like a really long time. And my name, Tertia, is a Latin word, means third. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like writing in Latin is really like, nice because firstly, there's a level of like an anonymity to it where I can like almost write like the most personal lyrics in Latin, and then I don't really feel like they're so exposed.
Yeah.
That's definitely the case for like the next song, which Historia is Latin for like history, like the
Right.
past.
Okay.
And that's definitely the case for that. But also for this, it's like quite nice because, I mean, the question I'm saying, Odeus cur es cruciatus, which I'm definitely not pronouncing right. It was like, why does the suffering, why do we suffer from like the happiness of others? And why does other people being happy make us feel shit?
Interesting.
It felt like a really like massive question. I was like, would be kind of cool if I like really lent into like the awesomeness of that question by like doing it in Latin, and like bit of a weird thing to do. Never heard it before. And then I kind of loved it, and it was like strange, and I think also there's something kind of mystical, and it's obviously a dead language. So like asking new modern questions in a dead language is like very pretentious, but like a really like kind of like a fun exercise, because obviously like Latin words, there are like so many different words for like suffering. So like the process of like finding the right kind of suffering,
Interesting.
like the right word for suffering, was like something that was really fun for me, because it's like, for example, in Greek there are like so many different words for love.
Right.
The English language in some ways is really limited. Like we love a cat in the same way that we love a granny, in the same way that we like love our boyfriend. Like it all feels like maybe we could have a bit more like maybe there's a like less of an awareness in the minutiae of like meaning, and I think that's nice and fun in Latin as well.
Yeah, it also speaks to the timelessness of that question, I think. Like,
Yeah.
I'm assuming all throughout human history, there was somebody who had something that they wanted and it made the other person feel completely awful. Like,
Yeah, but it is mad. It's a mad thing. Like, it's also mad when, I mean, maybe I'm revealing like something really dark and horrible about myself, but I feel like it's a thing for people, even when the people they love achieve something great, because it makes it, you automatically, obviously you can be on one level happy for them, but on another level, there's like the, you know, comparison being the killer of all joy. It forces a level of
Introspection.
introspection,
yeah.
comparison. And I think that like, that must just be like part of the human condition, but it is just like a weird phenomenon, which is really sad and
Yeah.
unfortunate. And it's like, why are we this way?
Yeah.
Like why, in what way does like humankind, even on like an evolutionary level, benefit from having the people we love be happy and that make us feel unhappy? And it doesn't always happen that way, of course.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. We're capable of being really happy for people we love. But sometimes not.
Yeah. It's such a fascinating and really deep question to kick off this EP with, but it's super cool. It really primes you for an experience, I think. Okay, cool. With that, how about we launch into the next one?
Looking at it with you in the real light.
so great. Um, I remember listening to that when it came out and just being like, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted from you. And it has that thing, you know, that we were talking about earlier, which is just like this, I don't know, it's like surprising and like challenging, and but also it has like such a richness to it that like I just want to vibe with, and just catches me from the beginning and like drags me through.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love it.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it was kind of like, I think it was like the song with the fastest ever turnaround. And I think you kind of hear it, like it is really simple. But I think like it was really inspired by Solange, her song, I think it's Into You.
Yeah.
Just like starting with a drum pattern and then like moving into like a synth entrance, like just like a chord sequence, like even here there's like the same. And I was like really into the song at the time, and I was just like, God, I love that. I love starting with the drums and
Yeah.
having like a synth come in.
Mm.
So that was kind of how I came up with that. And then I just found like, I think I felt probably it's like an accumulation of like 4 or 5 like drum loops.
Okay.
And then I just kind of like chopped them up, and then I like put some like mad effects on them. And I think I probably was just doing that classic producer thing where like you like just really overdo it on the plugins, and then there was no one there to be like, no, Tash, chill out. So then I ended up like sending them to the mix engineer, and he was like, okay, this is cool. So I worked with this amazingly talented and wonderful, kind guy, Kevin, who the guy that runs the label I'm signed to, Dalliance, and they're really good friends. They've worked together for a long time. Kevin works with like huge artists. He's like mixed for like Olivia Dean, and like he just remastered the new Pixies album. Like he's properly cool, but he kind of just agreed out of the kindness of his own heart to mix this EP for like a ridiculously like low price. Anyway, that's not very sexy to talk about, but he did me a real solid, and he like was just understood the assignment. But with this, I think it was like he was not expecting this with that song, and it was the first song he mixed, and he was a bit like, what? To be fair, someone knew I mixed that, so he mixed those 3. But he did advise on someone new. He told me, like, for example, like you need to put reverb on that cowbell, like you need to on the woodblock, sorry, or you need to like. So yeah, his presence has like his creative presence is very much there for the whole EP. But yeah, he was wicked. But that I think I really just went quite ham on the processing on that song.
Interesting.
Which was fun. And also like the chord sequence itself was very like Balls of Canada inspired.
Right.
Because they will often have like they'll have like a chord progression which is like so warm and comforting, and there'll be like one chord in there which is like, what? So for that, it's definitely like, I feel like this all makes sense. You're like, you maybe kind of expect that. Still a bit confusing. I think that one's weird.
Yeah.
I think that's the weird one. It's like a combination of like something that you're familiar with and something that is weird.
Yeah. It's giving me that experience of, like we were talking about contrast earlier, like this sort of is an example of that, where like I'm moving to the rhythm, but like emotionally I'm with these like slow synths.
Yeah, kind of like on one hand like quite upbeat, and on the other hand like very ambient.
Right.
And it was funny actually because someone said to me, this is like your danciest track, and I was like, what? Like, no, surely it's not. Like surely it's like very much a sort of just a sitting down, like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that to me, but I suppose maybe it's one of those songs that's kind of like the production doesn't really lean any particular way, so you're kind of left to decide that.
But it's got both, I think. Like it's sort of, it kind of reminds me of the Kuleshov effect in film, where like you film a character and then you film what they're looking at, and you can change what they're looking at, and it makes you feel differently about the person. It like recontextualizes it. And so, you know, I could be chilling the fuck out in my bedroom listening to the song, but I could also be partying. Like I can see it working in both environments, and that's so unique when it comes to music, you know, at least to the music I understand.
That's such a great observation. I've actually never really thought that is such a move in film and TV, when like you see the character's face, they're like shocked, and you're like, you good shocked, bad shocked?
Yeah.
I actually love that.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. I think also the song is also a bit of a contrast because like the song is about like basically it's kind of about falling in love, but it's also a lot about like self-doubt because the whole meaning of the song is like, am I getting too near? Like, is this gonna like I'm really feeling a lot of feelings and that's nice, but also like, am I in danger? Like, are you gonna ruin my life? Will I let you ruin my life? I might do. Like, it's kind of the question is like, on one hand, there's like a happiness of like the beauty of falling in love, but like there's like the greater ambiguity or like greater anxiety of like whether this is gonna like ruin me. And I think that that's actually a really like, I think there are quite a lot of songs about that. And like Ray, who we were talking about earlier, wrote this song, which was like, it's called Worth It. It's like really great, like poppy song. And she said that it was about like, are you going to make it all worth it for me? Like, is this actually going to be worth my time? And then I love that song, so it was so cool. And then I basically found out that she'd written that song after going on like one date with a guy. And it's just so funny how like your mind can get really, if you have like a good date, you can start to like have these like crazy like, I don't know. But that's the thing with songwriting is that like most people write songs and would be so embarrassed. Like when I first wrote this, I think maybe I was like 4 or 5 dates deep.
Right.
Like, and then I probably only like came clean about the song like 3 months in, at which point that still felt like unhingedly small amount of time. But yeah, maybe that's just maybe it's like a fresh emotion. Maybe that's what like drives that. It needs to be like a fresh feeling for it to translate into a song.
It's interesting, yeah. I suppose because it's always sort of an emotional or immediate reaction to something,
Yeah.
even if that something is like a memory maybe or like
Yeah.
something from the past. Cool. Okay, how about we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Wow, that is insane. Wow. I mean, incredible. Incredible.
Thanks. I weirdly listening to that. It's funny, like the like re-listenability of songs like really changes. So like for example, Someone New, when I released it, I was like, I like this song.
Mhm.
Now when I listen to it, I'm like, I love this song.
Mm.
Near, when I released it, I was like, I love this song. Now when I listen to it, I dislike the song.
Right.
This one, like, it basically changes. Like, sometimes I listen to it. Maybe it's because I've been drinking a cup of tea. I don't know. I just like, I'm listening to it and I'm like, I feel quite lukewarm about it.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that is the curse. That
Yeah, of course.
you're always listening back and like, oh wait, I obviously didn't quantize that. I should have quantized that because that's just really destroyed the groove of it. But I think that song was like the idea was that I wanted it to be like fun and
Mhm.
like really expressive. And I think a lot of somebody said to me that like my music almost like sort of simmers at the top, but it never like fully like blows over. And I was sort of like, well, like fuck you. Okay, I'll make a song where like that does happen.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's great. It's really interesting about the quantization because when I was talking to Matthew as well, we were listening to one of the songs in his album and he brought up that and he was like, oh, when I listen to this, it's super loose and like, and he was talking about quantization and how like he wasn't following a certain thing. And I was like, to me, it sounds so intentional because like I'm coming at it from obviously a point of view of never hearing before. I didn't make it. So like when I'm going into it, I'm like, this is it. This is the energy of this thing. And I'm like, loving it. Like it's because it's doing nothing other than adding to it. It's never like as like a first time listener a mistake. Do you know what I mean? You're just like completely absorbed in it, like, which is obviously so hard for you the maker to like have any other viewpoint of it other than like you were there for the whole making of it, the whole process of it. But
Yeah, I also think like, as I was saying earlier, like it seems a bit of a contradiction that on one hand I love like glitchy like sounds and like weird processing that has like where there's like, I don't know, there's dodgy like stuff happening in the production almost like intentionally, whilst also being like, grr, I didn't quantize that perfectly, like why is that not like but I feel like because it's a really busy arrangement. I think and I also had like that drum groove, like it's actually so hard to play. I mean,
I'd say so.
I'm not a drummer,
Yeah.
but it's really hard to play because it's like anyway, it's difficult, and I had to basically record it like numerous times with different drummers to get like the right performance, because it's also like drummers like obviously have a different groove, and like some of like are really like light with the sticks and some are like more like rocky and like more like intentional. I'm sure there are better words to describe
Yeah, it's like a
it.
personality coming through.
Yeah, and I feel like that was a particularly like challenging like kind of in between groove, and it was really hard. And then even once I had that, I was like, because I basically heard the groove on like I heard the groove on a sample and I really liked it, but I kind of thought it was like I didn't really like the processing on it, so I was like, I'm definitely want to have it be live. And then sometimes when you try and like mix live drums into like, and this is a challenge I have with a lot of my music as well, it's like an integration of like synthy stuff and live stuff. And I feel like that works really, really well for like, I don't know that if I'm right here, but my instinct is that like if you write guitar music and you're also trying to integrate synths, you've got like the guitar, which is like a live instrument. So that like merges everything together. If you're trying to marry like electronic sounds with very live acoustic sounds without the like binding role of the guitar, that's quite hard. And I'm sure there are loads of people that like might like disagree with me if I said that, but I feel like that is something that I struggle with, is trying to like marry those two things. I'm playing live as well. That is another thing that's hard to manage, because on one hand I really want the performance to be as live as possible, but on the other hand there are like elements which would just be impossible to perform live, which I feel to be like fundamental to the character of the music. So yeah, in general that is like a struggle that I have with like performing and recording my music.
But I would imagine that would be a common sort of problem for a lot of people who compose as well as like perform their music. Like you're getting all these different, like you're talking about the drummers, these people together to collaborate to produce your vision.
Yeah, I also think like sometimes when you integrate other people into it
Mm.
and try and direct them, and they do something different, more times than not, it's better. I think like collaborating is like really important, but also it's really hard to do. And I think especially as someone who like writes and records and produces and arranges it, you kind of get in this thing where you're like, no, I do this all on my own. Like this is like a me thing. It's all me. But actually, that's not helpful or interesting for anyone else apart from you. Like you get like a very like short-lived satisfaction for being able to say that. But actually, like if the music isn't good, then like no one's gonna care. So
sure.
like you may as well like involve other people and
Yeah.
get the best like possible result. But yeah, that song has a bit of a like. I think that song. I think that song is like kind of weird because on one hand it's kind of like one of my friends who I sent the song to unreleased was like, oh, it's like the perfect song to go running to. Like I'm gonna go running to it. And then I was listening to it and I was like, could I run to this? And I was thinking like, I don't actually think that I wouldn't, because that would be untinged if I was running to my own music, but like, could one run to this? And I was thinking like, probably not though, because like, it's like not decisively that kind of vibe. But it's not like decisively in a camp.
Mm.
But it is fun. I did enjoy making it, and I did like making like a sort of like a fun synth line
Yeah.
and screaming in a song, which I'd never done before, and like trying to not feel self-conscious about that, and then performing that live for the first time earlier this year, and then trying not to feel self-conscious about that.
And how did that go?
I don't know. I think it was okay. People were really nice about that song.
Great.
But I also think my live vibe is very like I hide behind a lot of the tech.
Okay.
Because I'm doing a lot of like I'm playing keys, synths, vocal effects, and is there something else in there that I'm not remembering? No, maybe that's it.
Mm.
And singing.
Yeah.
So I feel like there are like lots of different things, and that allows me to like distract myself from the fact that I'm being watched. But also that means that I can't do the front man thing where I'm like really singing my heart out. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
doing a lot of things.
Definitely. It's so many elements that you're trying to orchestrate at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think also because when I first started to record music, like I won like a raffle, which got me like, my mum signed me up to the raffle obviously because I like was writing songs, and it got me like a day in a recording studio in like Oxfordshire or something random. And I recorded some songs then. And on one hand I was like, this is sick, because I was like, however, I was young and I was like, this is epic. And it felt really cool. But on the other hand, I was like, I like recorded my like vocals, and I recorded the piano, and then I got sent the demo, and I was like, there's strings in this now, and like, there are like, he's like quantized the piano, and like, obviously I was like really impressed by it, but part of me was a bit like, I almost felt like betrayed that I wasn't able to like do that,
Mm.
or was that I wasn't there in the room. And I think that part of like the producing my own music feels like a tiny bit of like a rebellion, because I think there are so few female producers, or at least many female producers that do exist aren't given like the credit for being producers or engineers. And I think like there does feel like there's a lot of creative control in the industry given to men because of like the nature of STEM subjects, and like music tech being something that is considered male, and like the kind of that perpetuating itself over time. But I also think being able to be like, I think part of the pride, and maybe the danger of the pride in being like, I did this all, is kind of like, actually I'm a woman and I can do this. But it's like, of course I could do this. Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot of the stuff isn't hard. It's just a bit of a faff really. But I think that like being able to have a really clear feeling of like where you want something to go almost has given me the satisfaction of like feeling like I am in control, and like I do have the say, and I do have like the power to make something cool without having somebody telling me what I should do or what would sound cool. I don't know.
It's great.
That's a big long ramble. But
No.
basically, in a nutshell, being a woman, it's really hard to feel like confident enough to make those decisions. and having an artist project where you allow yourself to make all those decisions yourself is super empowering.
Yeah, I think that's really well put, and I love how you describe it as a rebellion too, because that extends beyond just like art. You're talking about something that's so important culturally and on a society-wide level. And that's what I think is so powerful about the music too, because it's, one thing to have a distinct voice and vision. And you were saying, it's not hard, but I mean, what you're doing is insanely impressive. And like, I've had this with all the conversations that I've done with this, being in the room with someone like you or Matthew or Lucy or Sean and being like, you made this, like not everyone gets to experience this, their friend expressing themselves in this truly like magical way. And it feeds this bias I have where I'm like, this is definitely the most important thing in the world, like whatever's at the core of this, like no doubt this is it. And what you're doing with your music, it's just like awe-inspiring and like inspirational. Like it's great.
It's really nice. So nice. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's I think it's just, yeah, it's all a bit fun really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like
it has to be like
has to be fun.
yeah,
And it's still hard work, but like it is like it's fun. And I think maybe I always wonder this, like how many people would write like a sick song or like compose like a sick piece of music if only they were like, I'm gonna do it. Because I feel like so many people are just one decision away from doing something that they're like so capable of, but they don't do.
yeah,
And like obviously the music thing is like really hard, and like being a small artist is really hard, but at the same time it's like you can still turn around and be like, I made that.
yeah,
And like even when like shit's really hard, like you can always come back to the music and be like, regardless of like how many streams this got, or like regardless of like how much money I was given for this, like I still made this. And like this is like the trophy, not the number of streams. And I think that's like, I mean, not to enter into a whole conversation about like the streaming world, but I think that a lot of artists don't feel that sense of reward anymore in the way that maybe they used to. And I'm sure that metrics have always been like an inevitable part of music making, especially if you're trying to do it professionally, but like the emphasis on metrics that there is now, where like people are routinely checking their Spotify for artists, and you can see how many people are listening to your music right now, how many streams did you get yesterday, the day before, like you're constantly put face to face with like these like, and what are often vanity metrics, because a lot of this stuff doesn't really matter. Like if you're added to a playlist and like shitloads of people listen to your music, that's really sick, but like if they're not fans, then like what does it really mean? So I think that that's like a big problem, and I think that's why a lot of people find the process of releasing music so like traumatic, is because like you basically are forced to be like, okay, what's the song worth? Oh, it's worth 3,000 streams. Oh, it's worth 300,000 streams. It's not, it doesn't, that all feels like beyond a certain point quite like random.
yeah,
And I think it's really easy to forget about that. And I think that's why conversations like these are so nice, because it's like, for once I can actually talk about my music. Like, and I can actually talk to you about like the process and what it means and like who I am. And it all feels like a lot more meaningful than just being like, the first thing that people do when they go like, oh, that's so cool, like you're a musician, that's wicked, like what's your name? Tertia. And then they're like, oh great, and they search you up and the first thing they see is how many monthly listeners you have and how many streams you have. And that's weird. I think that's weird. Like
Yeah.
first thing, it's like when you like follow someone on Instagram and the first thing you see is how many followers they have, and it's hard to separate like, it's hard to separate how good something is from those
yeah,
things. But actually I think like with music, I mean, also because I love like the alternative music scene, I like genuinely am suspicious if a song has like so many streams, which is my own problem that I
Oh, yeah.
think about.
It makes sense.
But I guess like the importance of conversations like these,
Yeah.
in like there's a satisfaction in being able to talk about this in real human words,
Yeah,
as opposed to just being like, listen.
yeah. I think you're dead right. Like, I think that's really well put, the way you've laid down, that sort of argument. I mean, it's why I do these conversations, because it's so, every time I sit down with a person to talk to them, it's just so interesting. And, it really, I think it lets the art shine through, like what you're actually doing, and all that other stuff that's sort of just been placed on top of it gets brushed away, and you can really focus on the person and their music or whatever art they're creating. It's great. Will we?
The last one.
Yeah, let's do it.
Have those receipts up in your sheets. Let me compete. I'm not crazy for saying it. I'm crazy for wanting it. I'm not crazy for saying it. I'm crazy for wanting it. I felt you. I felt you. I felt you. I'm not crazy for saying it. Can't get you off of my, can't get you off of my mind. They think you're freaky, I just think you're one of a kind. Can't get you off of my, can't get you off of my mind.
That's it.
It's incredible. I fucking love that song. I love the whole ending to that. Is so cool. How does it feel to listen to it all again, back to front?
It feels nice. I feel like enough time has happened since I wrote them now, where I can kind of listen, for the most part, listen to them and feel like I have some kind of perspective. So obviously, like with every kind of piece of art, when you're listening, when you're doing it, you eventually lose perspective and you come back and you're like, oh yeah, that's wrong, which can be bad. But I feel like I have it's nice to listen to it, and it's also nice to listen to it all with somebody else, because I'm like thinking about what you're hearing, and that also gives me a new perspective as well. But yeah, I really love that song. I'm basically that last section. I had like so many different versions of it. The second part, and then I invited my friend Jacob to like jam with me, and then I was like, actually, like, would you be down to put like some guitar over that bit? And then he came up with that line, was like, do 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 do, and I was like, oh my god, I love that so much. And then I was like, I have to make that like the personality of the song now.
Right.
So then I was like, okay, so like indie rock, or like we're going for like a psychedelic rock vibe. Okay, great. So then I was like to Annie, my incredible friend / drummer Annie, was like, I was like, please, can you just add some funky drums? And Annie was just like perfect for it. And then she did those like psychedelic rock drums, and then it was like Kevin, the guy that mixed it, was like his ballpark completely, and he really liked the song. So I feel like I could hear that in the mix. He was like really leaning in. So yeah, I really love that song. I actually started writing that song for the first, well, I wrote the lyrics. There is a lyric like, are those receipts up in your sheets? When I was like 19, and I was like friends with this guy And this guy was like basically a massive like lady player, like a massive woman killer. And I remember like I was like hanging out, and he told me that he'd slept with like 80 people or something. We were like 19, and like I was like hanging out like at his place, and like we were like hanging out in his room, and I was like looking at his bed, and I was like, ugh. I hope you clean those sheets. I remember being like, and then I remember just being like, God, I found him like a really like fascinating person, and I like wrote this like weird kind of poem like about not just him, but just sort of about like his lifestyle when I was like back in the day, when I thought I saw myself as a bit of a poet. And then I basically found those lyrics. I'm like, that was quite cool lyric, those receipts up in your sheets. And I was like, let's get that into a song. And I also have always been told I've got a bit of a like unconventional taste in men, that like I always like have been into men that other people are like, that's weird. And like the perfect example of this is, you know, American Beauty.
Yeah.
You know, what's his chops, the camera guy.
Yes. You mean the neighbor?
Yeah, the neighbor.
Yeah.
He's like my dream man, and he's like a fucking creep. But like for some reason he's my dream man, and like it's the same. Like I always fancy like the freaks. I don't know. There's something weird. I don't know. There's something weird going on. I need to figure it out. And so I think it was also a bit of a like, they think you're freaky, but I think you're just one of a kind. Like I'm interested in the like mystery and the weirdness behind people. And I also think I am quite in my own self. Like I don't see it, but people say that I'm like a bit zany and a bit like I have like a part of me is a bit weird. In a fun way. People aren't being mean, or at least I take it in a nice way. So it was kind of like a love letter to like myself as well. Like just like liking like weird stuff. But it feels like a nice outro to the EP, and it also kind of like the first song is like quite like sad, and then the next one feels a bit more like the last one feels a bit more hopeful. So yeah, I'm glad it's the last song on the EP. Actually, I'm glad that I made that decision. I don't actually remember deciding what song was going when, but that version of myself, I agree with. Well done, me, from that. But yeah, it's really cute. I also really love those two people, Annie and Jacob. So like, it makes me really happy.
Yeah.
Knowing that they were
A part of
that
it.
song and
Yeah.
a part of it. It's really nice.
It's awesome.
It's the same thing. Like when I watch that music video that we made together, it makes me so happy because I'm just like, I just really, really like you, and it's just really nice making stuff with your friends.
Yeah.
Like it's the best thing. It's like literally the best part of doing this is that you get to like, I mean, obviously you get people to do massive favors for you, and kind of like, I'm massively indebted to like so many of my friends for like spending time on like projects like that. But it really does add to like the feeling of reward after all of it. And as I said, like at the very least, I can look back and be like, that was cute and that was fun. And we laughed.